Hi, I'm Derin McMains, and I'm about to have a productive conversation with Mike Vardy.
Welcome to A Productive Conversation. I'm Mike Vardy, and in this episode, I sit down with former professional baseball player and mental performance coach, Derin DMac McMains. We discuss DMac's journey from pro ball to coaching and mental performance work. We explore the challenges that athletes face with identity, transitioning beyond their sport. We talk about the Diamondbacks, who DMac is working with, and DMac's worked with a slew of great athletes, and it's great to be able to dive into this kind of conversation, which I don't get to do very often. We also talk about the importance of fundamentals, presence, cultivating mindfulness, both on and off the field, and so much more. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Derin DMac McMains here on A Productive Conversation. Enjoy. Derin, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today to have a productive conversation. I want to get into things right away in terms of the way you introduced yourself and then the way we're going to talk about you as we make our way through this conversation today. Because very rarely do I get someone with a prominent nickname to have a conversation with. So,
Sure.
it's DMac. That's what we're going to, and so
Let's do it.
I mean, I'm not going to ask you the origins of the name. It's pretty clear where the origins came from, but when did people start calling you that? Was it when you were in pro ball? Was it before that? Like, when did that start happening? Because we're going to get into where you're at now, but I want to start with that part of the journey initially.
Sure. Yeah. I've been playing sports my whole life since I was, 5 years old. And I think DMAC probably picked up sometime around high school baseball, probably can't remember specifically. I have an older brother who played professional baseball as well. His name's Ryan. It was not Armac though. They just called him Smack because he'd hit a lot of guys, and that's the sound it would make when he'd hit the when he hit the batter was smack. So, but DMAC has been it, and it's been funny, as going into my 24th season in professional baseball. I bet I could probably count on two hands how many people probably know my name is really Derin. I mean, it is just DMAC everywhere I go. And in fact, some people look out of the corners of their eyes when they hear my wife call me DMAC as well. But she was a college athlete, and her maiden name is Bird. And so her first name is Nicole, but I call her Bird. So we got Bird and DMAC running around the house. So it's a wild place. But yeah, nicknames are where we live.
It's interesting because during my youth and even today, people just call me Vardy sometimes because there's so many. I grew up in an era where there's so many mics, right? Like there'd be like 6 mics in a classroom. So you didn't want to hear your whole name. The only person that would say your whole name is your teacher. But your peers would go, hey, Vardy, hey, Smith, hey, whatever, right? Or whatever, because, you say Mike and everyone's like, what? Like 6 of us turn around.
Sure.
So you played pro ball, and then you made the transition to a mental performance coach, which to me, and we were talking about this before we hit record, the correlation between, pro athlete and mental performance. I mean, you hear about it, but to be someone that made that transition, did you know as your career was winding down on the field that was kind of where you were headed? I mean, let's look at a guy like Jason Kelce right now, who's rumored, as we're recording this, to be retiring, right, from the NFL, from the Eagles. And everyone's like, well, what's next for him? Even my wife was like asking, because of course she watched the Kelce series because of Travis Kelce, because of some lady that Travis is dating, I think. But they said that he's likely to end up in the broadcast booth, right? Because that's another place that pro athletes end up, or they end up, on as a coach, right? Like, working, in the organization, like a Dusty Baker or like, a Don Mattingly or what have you. Did you know that was kind of where you were going to hit? And if not, where was the point where you said, this is an area that I'm going to lean into hard?
Sure. Well, first let's back up to that pop singer. Just a quick little anecdote story about her. I remember playing in the minor leagues when I was in Double A in the Eastern League. We would go down and play Reading, down in Reading, Pennsylvania. Yep. She's from Reading, and I remember consistently we would be on the line lining up for the national anthem, and there would be this little skinny girl out with her big old guitar playing the national anthem routinely. And the rest of us, we'd look around and we'd be rolling our eyes. And they would always introduce her as like Reading's, next big star, Taylor Swift. And I remember we'd look and roll our eyes, being like, oh, this poor girl, her parents are just putting her out there. And that just tells you how good a talent evaluators all us minor league baseball players were. And standing feet from her, right? Her playing the national anthem as a young person. But it's cool to see what she's done now. Obviously, I don't know her at all, but I just know where she started. I know all the reps she was getting that no one was seeing. I know the work she was putting in before, she got to where she's gotten to. And so anyway, I just want to drop that when I heard her name.
But that's another thing too, right? Like it takes a certain amount of mental performance, of fundamentals, of just, like you said, putting in the reps, right? Like if you want to pursue that, and you have to do that for pro sport. Like if you want to be an athlete, a pro athlete, you can't phone it in. You've got to, you got to go where where you're supposed to go. You've got to learn all. I mean, like I said before we hit record, I'm a fan of sports. I like watching sports. I don't watch the entire major league season because that's a lot to watch, right? There's like 162 games in the season, right? Yeah. Football, I get away with it. Hockey, I certainly don't watch at all. I have very weird teams that I'm fans of based on, a bunch of different, aspects of my life that led me to those teams. But yeah, like I've always watched the career paths, not just of the athletes that I enjoy, but what happens afterwards. And as someone who's, almost 50, those athletes that I saw growing up are now in those roles like coach, manager, again, broadcast, right? So obviously you weren't going to become a talent scout for Sony Music, right? But
it's obvious. Yeah.
But when was that pivot point for you where you said, I'm not going to go down this path, this idea of performance. This is an area I want to go down.
Yeah, so it definitely was not on my radar, mental performance coach at all. Like as a player, I saw people that did sports psychology work, mental performance coaches, and I avoided them like the plague, right? It was like, that's where you go when you're messed up. That's where you go when you struggle and you can't figure it out. And so I had no business, I had no interest, in that. So I went into coaching though. And when I started coaching on the field, hitting coach, infield coach with the San Francisco Giants and their organization, and then ultimately managing in the minor leagues, and then you start getting to know everybody and you start seeing how different players show up at practice, different players show up at the game, the mindset behind it. Because as an athlete, at least for me, and it's pretty consistent throughout, you're just focused on you. How can you get to the next level? How can you make your money, right? How can you help this organization win a championship, right? And so you become very selfish, very me focused. But then once you become a coach, you're trying to bring the whole thing together. So you get to know kind of everybody's story and where they're at. And that is when I realized, wow, like there's a whole nother level to tap into from the mental side. And so that's when I went back to school and got master's in sports psychology, sport and performance psychology specifically, to learn more about how I can train the mindset. And honestly, though, it was just for me to be a better coach. I wanted to just be a better coach. And then this was 2010. The Giants approached me, found out I was going to school to do that. They said, hey, we've never had mental performance. It's starting to grow. We want to get out ahead of it. When you graduate, and they helped me through school, when you graduate, we want you to roll out our first mental performance program. And so I did that in the fall of 2012. Because I started to see where I could approach it from a proactive standpoint. It wasn't something where people that were broke or struggling, would go. It's like, oh no, hey, these are some strategies to get out in front of it. So I kind of compare it to like a strength coach, right? It's like, if I'm trying to improve my physical health, I don't just wait until I get sick and go to the doctor. No, what I do is if I want to improve my physical health, I lean into nutrition. I lean into maybe getting a personal trainer. I work with my strength coach. Why? Because they help me be proactive in my physical health so I can maybe not go visit the doctor as much. I look at mental health the same way. Mental performance coach is going to help you be on the proactive side, develop strategies and specific things you can do consistently to help keep your mental health in check so you can maybe not go visit the psychologist or the psychiatrist as many times. And so when I changed my perspective and saw, wow, this is a proactive way to approach mental health, and more importantly, like mental performance within the competitive space, that's when I really went all in and have been doing that for the last 12 years now.
I was thinking about the lifespan of a pro athlete's career. It's not long, right? Now, there's some people that say, yeah, but they get paid a lot and that's fine. Yeah, but there's so many other, again, there's nuance to all this stuff, right? And I mean, especially when you're And I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I theorize that it really becomes wrapped in your identity, right? Like, when you're starting that young, and then when you retire, and you went through this, right?
Yep.
It's not just what you did, it's who you are in the role that you have, because we come across this with other fields as well, not just pro, but I mean, if you worked your way up and then you're retiring even at 55, 60, if you were in one role for 30 years, you don't know how to operate outside of that. I have clients that I work with that a lot of retirees that say, I have all this time now and I don't know what to do with it, because they had less agency. Now they have all kinds of it, and they're like, well, what do? I don't want to fritter it away. So, how do you, in the work that you do, there's got to be some level of that where you are not just preparing them for obviously what's going on right now, but what the future holds, because there must be, well, there's got to be an intensity level, while the career is going on, that they need to hit that level, and then what happens afterwards. So, like, is that part of what you look at as well?
Yeah, Vardy, you bring up a great point around identity, right? And so I think it's important to understand kind of where do our actions, where do our behaviors, where does our performance come from? And this is where I work with athletes all the time on this. And I'll just deconstruct it. Let me work backwards, because I
Sure.
think that tends to be more helpful for people. So start with like, hey, performance or actions. Why did I do that thing? Why did I perform that way? Well, it's because you felt like it. It's like it's our emotions that influence our actions, right? So then the next question is, well, why do I feel that way? Why am I having those emotions? Well, it's our thoughts. So how you think determines how you feel, and how you feel influences how you perform, right? Well, why was I thinking that way? Why did I have those particular thoughts? Well, that's because of your perspective. So how you see the world, how you see the game, how you see this workout determines how you think about it, right? And then how you think about it determines how you feel. How you feel influences what you do. Well, it's like, well, why is my perspective that way? Like, why am I seeing this game or this situation that way? Well, that goes to our identity, right? Anais Nin said, the philosopher said, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are, right? And I say the same in sport. You don't see the game as it is, you see it as you are, right? And so you bring yourself and how you see yourself to the game. And so that identity piece is huge, absolutely huge, right? And what happens is, and I experience the same thing, when people cheer for you, when people want to talk to you, when people, most of the things they talk to you your whole life is about, hey, good game, nice job, right? Everything, all of a sudden you just become the baseball player, right? Oh, I'm a baseball player. Then all of a sudden when you're not playing baseball, then who are you, right? So the interesting thing though, when it does come to optimal performance, is we think about how can I compete with freedom, right? The freedom to trust my training, the freedom to trust my teammates, right? And it's the freedom to go out and just do the thing that I've trained my body to do. A lot of that is detaching yourself from the result, detaching yourself from the outcome that you can't control anyway. And so, how do we detach ourselves from that? Well, that goes back to our identity, right? And so, it's interesting. A lot of the work that I do eventually gets to a place, because that's a lot of conversations to get there. Like, we're just not going to jump in. Hey, I'm DMac. Nice to meet you. Let's talk about your beliefs, core values, and self-image and your deepest darkest. We don't
No.
talk about that right away. But that's why trust is so important in this profession, right? And that's why there's a level of confidentiality that goes along with it. But the goal is to always get athletes to a place where they see themselves beyond their sport, and they're just a person that plays baseball. Like, I'm a person that plays baseball versus I'm a baseball player. And then what that eventually does, not only does it help them compete with freedom while they're playing, but it also paves a way for better career transition, right? You start to see yourself as someone with skills that can do a lot of different things versus just someone that can play baseball.
Right. And the idea of playing, like I'm a person that plays baseball, puts the play back into it, which should be the fun part, which is, I
All
mean,
right.
so you bring up the confidentiality piece, which is interesting to me, and I totally get it, because I would imagine that there is some humility and the ego that kind of says, I don't want people to know that I struggle with this stuff.
Right.
How do you, first off, let me, I'm going to make this a two-parter. Was there someone that came to you? Obviously, you're not going to, that you were like, wow, like I didn't expect this. And then how many of them? And then, and then DMac, how do you, again, that trust piece is obviously very important, But how are you able to recognize when this is happening? You mean you've got the training, so how are you able to recognize like this person needs something, and I'm not going to push for it, but I'm going to try to draw them in a bit? Like, is it through the fact that you were a player, so that's helpful, or is it the peers that have worked with you? Like, because often there is that hang up of I don't want to be vulnerable here. And
Sure.
I'm this is my job. This is what this worked. I mean, why am I having these issues? So I love to touch on that because again, this doesn't just, cover pro athletes. I mean, people feel this too,
Yeah.
especially people that are, you wouldn't believe that are like, wow, they struggle with this stuff too, which actually is super helpful for people who struggle with it that aren't at that level.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you bring up a great point. I haven't, I have never spoken with a professional athlete. And mind you, this is even as a player, but more specifically in this mental performance role in the last 12 years and working with Major League Baseball, NFL, MLS, professional tennis. I haven't spoken with one that doesn't struggle with self doubt, that doesn't feel unmotivated at times, that doesn't worry about what other people think about them, right? I mean, they all have the same, we're all people, right? And I think those are just all natural parts of the human experience. And so what what we do with that a lot of times is, I mean, a way to build trust is just through listening, right? Listening intently, right? Asking purposeful questions that really help them identify, right? I'm trying to help them identify, right? Because I'm not smart enough to know where we're going with this. I'd like to think I know some questions that can help us get it there, but I don't know where we're going to go. And sometimes I have been extremely surprised, hearing from all stars, future Hall of Famers that, they're doubting their ability. And, me as a former player, I'm thinking to myself, how this person doubted their, like, wow. But I do want to bring that up though, because as a former player, I have to be really careful to put that aside because I can't just, well, I'm a player, so I know what you're thinking. Well, now
Right.
I'm in trouble. Now I'm not listening to them, right? And so that was a skill that I actually had to learn when I went back to school. On like, don't always bring your experience into the room. That's not going to be a help because your experience is not their experience, right? And so by just leaning into that, it's allowed me to ask better questions. But what I found along the way is that just helping them normalize it, helping that understand that that's a part of it, and changing the relationship with, hey, it's not that you shouldn't feel this. You do. Now, what do we do with it? Right? Instead of beating yourself up and wondering if there's something wrong with you, let's just go, this is what I have. Now, what am I going to do to push past it? Right. And so I think what professional athletes that have competed at a high level for an extremely long time, what they've done from a mental standpoint, if they've normalized it, they've accepted it. When I say it being doubt, worry, all those types of things, they've normalized it in their own minds. They don't use it as a knock against them. They just use it as a thing they're just going to push back through. Just like any physical skill, it's like I can't make that jump shot. Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go work on it. I'm not going to
Right.
avoid the jump shot. I'm not going to pretend it's not there. You go when you practice it. So mental skills the same way. I don't like the way that I hang my worth on what my coach thinks about me. Right. Well,
Mhm.
let's go tackle that. Why do you do that? Where does that come from? Is that real? Is it imagined? Is it a story you're telling yourself? What's a better story you can tell yourself, right? And so we just start going through this whole process, and then it's just reminding ourselves of that daily, right? I say this all the time. We need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed, right? We all know what to do most of the time. Life just kind of gets in the way and we just forget. And sometimes it helps to have a coach, someone that has just a little bit different view of it, to be able to pull you out of the muck and go, oh, yeah, that's right. Let me go back to that.
I want to talk about fundamentals because one of the first podcasts I listened to that talked mostly about sport was David Robinson, or the Robinsons, because it was both David and his son. And they had a
Mm,
podcast limited series called The Fundamentals. And what I loved about that, and it was not just purely associated with sport. I mean, obviously you've got one of the greatest basketball players ever talking about, one of the things he said is, I don't care if you can do a 360 dunk or whatever. If you can't pass the ball, like you can't be great unless you get good at the fundamentals. How how often are you finding yourself in a world that definitely celebrates those moments of glory that, I mean, you've got the hockey players that do the lacrosse style goals that get highlight reels. You've got the,
yeah.
the dunk contest, right? All that. How do you help players that are so stuck in this mentality, and again, I don't know if they are. I'm assuming in the mentality of I've got to have that big play. I've got to make that, and
Yeah.
keep them focused on those fundamentals so that to me they're foundational, right? Like if those fall apart, other things. And again, in life that happens too, right? So what are
Yeah.
some of the tactics that and the things you share with them to help them like you said, to reel them back in, to go, hey, yes, you're gonna make. I mean, we want you to make those amazing plays, those barehanded grabs and stuff like that. But you also see the players that try to do the barehanded grab and the ball goes right by them, and you're like, wait, whoa, like that's. And then you hear the announcer go, that's minor league,
Yeah.
that's sandlot stuff right there or whatever, right? So I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah. I love this idea because I think this is the coach in me. I coached for 5 years prior to moving into mental performance. And so specifically in baseball, right? When I work with
Yeah.
athletes in other sports, I don't have the kind of the same view into what the fundamentals are. But first I would say, sometimes players will come to me and say, hey, I need, specifically baseball, I need to work on my confidence with this,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And sometimes I start with, um, I mean, competence a lot of times leads to confidence, right? And it's like maybe you're just not very good. Maybe you just haven't put in enough reps. And I know we kind of get to the chicken or the egg conversation here, but an example I share with guys sometimes is like, look, man, my wife's great at snowboarding. I suck at it, and that's okay, right? When we go snowboarding, I go to the bunny hill because that's where I need to be.
Yep.
Now, do I need to go see a mental performance coach to improve my confidence so I can ride the blue or the black diamonds? No, I need reps, Barty. That's what I need. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, if I'm cruising down the bunny hill, right, and I'm shredding it or whatever, yeah, maybe it might be a confidence issue because I'm afraid of the blue. But first of all, why don't we learn some fundamentals and just learn how to turn on a snowboard, right? So I would say first and foremost, like at least from a baseball standpoint, I start looking and going, hey, has this guy mastered the fundamentals yet? Second piece of that is to help guys buy into the fundamentals of their sport. Success leaves clues, right? And so there are athletes everywhere that have mastered this. And Alan Stein Jr., a friend of mine, also works in the sports performance
Yep.
space. Tells a great story about Kobe Bryant. And Kobe, we've all read about Kobe Bryant's epic 4 a.m. workouts, where and especially in the off season when he's doing them 3 times a day. But he tells this story around this idea of he gets up early to go watch Kobe work out, and he tries to beat Kobe to the gym. So he gets there because he knew Kobe was going to work out at 4 a.m. So he gets there at 3:45. Kobe's already in a sweat. And Alan's like, dang, I missed it. But he watched him for 45 minutes do the same basic fundamental moves over and over and over. And he was actually really disappointed. He thought, man, I got up early to watch this. Like, this is nothing. And so he even asked Kobe, he said, hey, man, I watched you do the basic fundamentals for 45 minutes. Why'd you do that? He's like, you're the best player in the world. I thought you'd be doing something else. And he looks at him and goes, why do you think I'm the best in the world? And so just a great point of like, because I've mastered the fundamentals and I don't get past them, right? So when I share that story with other athletes, that are trying to become the best versions of themselves, it's always a good check. Hey, like, are you mastering your fundamentals? Because the greatest basketball player that a lot of us seen, if they didn't see Michael Jordan, right? We won't have to get into that argument, but we know that he was obsessive about the fundamentals, right? And so sharing those stories about like other athletes and what they're doing and allowing the athletes that I'm working with to kind of make the connections, because it's not me telling you, it's more like, oh, that guy does that. Okay. Oh, she does that. Okay. And then they start to make the connection themselves. Then I'm going to commit to doing this myself.
Before we wrap up, DMac, I want to ask you about balance. There's an article in the Washington Post that you were interviewed, and why mental performance coaches and productivity can go hand in hand. And the first thing is like you don't believe in work-life balance, which I loved because I hate the adjective in front of balance as well. I think it's a terrible. That's me. That's
Yeah.
me. Balance is balance is balance, right? Like you could say harmony, you could say integration, whatever, but the term balance does not need, if you put an adjective in front of it, as far as I'm concerned, you are now weakening it because balance isn't just about work and life. There's first off, life as work infused, especially when you're talking about athletes. Like
Yeah.
it is all of that, right? You mentioned like you're a person that plays baseball or you're a baseball player. Identity gets wrapped into that. So balance is to me incredibly key, but not the idea of putting that adjective in front of it. So I want to hear what your thoughts are on balance because again, like I said, I read that article. We'll link to it in the show notes. I'm like, okay, that was like
Sure.
flipped a switch for me. I'm like, all right, let's lean in to see what DMAC has to say about this.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. I mean, look, I think we all want the same thing. We all want to feel like we got 2 feet on the ground and we know what's going on, right? I mean, it's just like, and I'm with that. So when I say, I'm not for work-life balance, I think some people get like, oh my gosh, he's trying to run us in the dirt. It's like, no, 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 not even close, right? It's like, I think by in my experience and the conversations I've had, people are trying to leave the office early to go to the game and then have the office phone call in the car ride when they should be talking to their kid, right? Or sending the email at the kid's practice thinking, well, I'm here, it's good enough. It's like you're not there. The kid knows you're not there. You're on your laptop, right? And so, but I think what people really want, like I said, it's like, hey, I want 2 feet on the ground. I want to feel stable. I want to feel like I can walk forward and handle each and every day. And I believe the way to do that is through presence. Presence is the way to experiencing the balance that we all want in our life, right? And so, but I think trying to be in three places at one time and do this while I should be there and focusing on that and having my talk to my boss on the phone where the kid's in the back car and just wants to tell me about their school day, right? Or whatever it might be. It's like that's not the way to do it. You're taking on water in the boat, and that's the worst way to feel balance, right? And so what I was hoping to do and what I'm still trying to do is help people change their perspective on like, hey, let's chase presence. Let's chase being present at work. Let's chase being present at home when you get there. Let's chase being present in your communities and let's being all in because that's when you feel most alive, right? And so how do you do that? Well, the simplest way, there's a lot of ways to do it. It takes training, but for me, the simplest way is how clear and challenging are your goals professionally? And this is the big one, how clear and and challenging are your goals personally, right? A lot of people, hey, I'll tell you my to-do list at work. I'll tell you my weekly, my monthly, my quarterly goals at work. Then, hey, personally, what are you running after? Like, what kind of parent you want to be? Like what are you saving for? Like what are some of the trips that you're taking your kids on, right? Hey, tell me those goals. Tell me those things you're growing personally. I don't have any. Well, of course, you know why you think about work while you're at home is because all your goals sit professionally, right? And goals demand our attention. And so, of course, I'm going to naturally go back to that or vice versa, right? I mean, sometimes people come to work and maybe they're not as driven professionally. And so all their goals are personal. They can tell you everything they're doing Monday through Sunday, and all those things. And you're like, hey, what are your professional goals? I don't know. I just do whatever they tell me to do. Right. Well, no wonder you're miserable at work because you're thinking about home. Right. And so it's learning to be more intentional in goal setting, right? Being more intentional in who do you want to be? How do you want to show up at work? Who do you want to be? How do you want to show up at home? And when you get clarity around those two things, it starts to demand your focus and attention in those spaces, which allows you to be present and be all in where you're at. And all of a sudden you feel like, wow, I feel really balanced with where I'm at right now.
And you get quality results.
Oh, huge, right? And Vardy, I'll tell you this. I share this with people all the time. They're like, like, oh, I just want to spend more time with my friends or family, whatever it might be. And it's like, okay, cool. Hey, check this out. Would you rather spend 3 hours with someone and 2.5 of those hours they're on the phone, texting, scrolling, send an email, or would you rather spend 45 minutes of just you and me talking, having a coffee, having a great conversation like you and I are doing right now? Well, everyone picks the 45 minutes. So it's not quantity. You don't want more time. What you want is more quality time. And how do you get more quality time is through presence.
Yep, absolutely. And it's so interesting that all of these things come back to timeless, simple truths, but simple isn't always easy.
Exactly. Exactly.
And when we've got so many things vying for our attention, that's it. It actually just came to me as we were talking about this. Is what do I notice most pro athletes do when they're getting ready to get into the zone? When they're ready to, what do? They take a breath, right?
Breath. Yeah.
That is like, and it doesn't take time to do, it doesn't take any additional time because you would do it anyway. It just takes more presence, more, it puts you in a present moment. It just takes more attention really to go like, okay, I'm going to take a deeper breath. I'm going to take, I'm imagining that's probably part of some of the stuff that you tell some of your clients as well, in terms of like, take that, the breath can be a pause and the pause can be a breath, right? And that can help get you all those other things.
Yeah, that's a great call out because the breath is so easy to do, makes it easy to forget. Oh, I'll do here in a minute, right? Or whatever it is. And so, yeah, but that is one of the quickest simplest, as you said, I love it. Simple's not easy. One of the quickest and simplest, though, ways to bring us to the present moment is to focus on our breath. Focus on that inhale, hold it in your chest, right? And then let it go out through the exhale and focus on that exhale. Another thing to do, and I mentioned this to you before we went on live, is just using our senses, right? We can't smell in the future or past. We can't taste in the future. And so you got your coffee there. And I shared, with an athlete I was working with recently of just like, hey, how can we be more present to have breakfast with your kids in the morning? First thing you can do is when you get your cup of coffee, smell it. Like really smell that cup of coffee, and that'll bring you right into the moment of like, wow, I'm getting ready to enjoy this cup of coffee. And then you can be present with your kids before you're worried about getting them to school and every which way. And I'll tell you what was really funny. He said back to me, he said, man, I love this idea of smelling to bring myself to the present. He has two small kids, and I don't know if you know where he's going with this, but he says, but one thing I will not do is smell the dirty diaper. I said, oh, please no, like go to the future, go anywhere you need to go to get away from that. But yeah, or you're eating, right? It's just like, how many times, think about this, how many great restaurants have you been to that you really tasted the food? Or were you so on your phone or so somewhere else thinking about who's coming in the door, the decor, that you really missed how great the meal was, right? And so just looking for ways to do that.
I can tell you this really quickly, is I was talking to my daughter about it last night. There's a pub just up the road, and I was going for a walk. My buddy who lives near me, we went for a walk. And I was meeting him up there, and he said, well, we should just go grab a coffee or something. I'm like, man, it's close to lunch. Why don't we just go in there and have a lunch and have a beer, and we went in there, and it was just me and him, and middle of the day, so there's not going to be a lot of interruptions or anything like that. And I had a garlic chicken burger with goat cheese and fries and gravy and an IPA. And I remember the taste, not the healthiest meal, I'll give you that, but it was like, I remember the taste, like we savored that meal. There was and that's the thing is, I think, when you're in that when you're fully present, time becomes like, you're not as concerned about the passing of time. You're more concerned about the investing of the time that you're doing. And you're not even, actually, time is not even, it's the furthest thing from your mind. Right. Yeah. And that's saying something for somebody who makes his entire career out of talking and thinking about time. The fact that I was not thinking or talking about time in that moment, I have people all the time saying, oh, like friends pass away. And last year I had a couple of people that were close to me that passed away. And they're like, oh, when that happens, I just dive into my work. Like, that's not really going to work for me. Because, I think about mortality. I mean, that's some of the things, that come to mind. But in that moment, during that lunch, which now I'm getting hungry because it's close to time for lunch for me here, that garlic chicken burger with goat cheese and fries with really, just really good gravy, and that IPA, it was, and the company I was with too.
Well, you know what? And think about how much that meal has impacted you. I don't know how many meals you've had since then. But what I do know was because you were present and you savored that meal, it's impacted you in a way that you and I are talking about it right now, right? And you can still go back and so it's just finding more of those moments. And that's the thing, like we're in control of that, right? It takes intentionality, but we are in control of how can we create more moments where we are present when we're with the people that we love, or when we're at work, or when we're eating, whatever it might be, because that's where I think our best lives sit.
DMac, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you for taking the time today. Where can people keep up with you and the work that you're doing?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. I'm on Instagram, DMac_mindset. We also have a podcast called No Show Dogs, where I have a co-host, Dr. Nicole Detling, who's also a mental performance coach, where we interview some of the highest performers in sports and in the sports business side of things, and then talk about how those principles in sport apply across multiple other industries and how to apply that to your everyday. So those are a couple places you can find me.
Thanks so much today, DMac, for having a productive conversation with me today.
Appreciate you, Vardy.
Big thanks to DMac for joining me on this episode. You can check out everything that we talked about, relevant links, helpful key points, all that fun stuff at productivityist.com/podcast521. You can also check them out wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even YouTube. And while you are checking out on those various implementations and platforms, subscribe to the show. That way you don't miss a single episode of what's to come, and then you can easily search through the archives as well and find a plethora of the over 500 episodes we've produced over the years. In fact, we've just passed the 10-year mark of recording this show, which is amazing to me. And I want to thank everybody that's been part of that journey, from the people behind the scenes as well as you, the listeners, for bringing the show to life year in and year out over the past decade. Can you believe it? That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for taking the time to check out this episode. Be sure to check out our sponsors, by the way, as well. Just go to productivities.com/podcast sponsors and check them out. That'd be a nice treat for a 10-year anniversary for this podcast, wouldn't it? To let sponsors know that, you know, you found them through me. I think that'd be kind of cool. What also would be kind of cool is just subscribe to the show. Keep it up and have a very productive week, month, and beyond. Until next time, I'm Mike Varda, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.